So, good afternoon. It's Tuesday, the 26th of March, and it's with real pleasure that today we have got an Ask the Expert session on overcoming childhood sleep issues. It's a real pleasure to be able to welcome Kath Garwood, who's joining us for today's session to go through a whole variety of questions that we've got prepared for her. But just as way of introduction, Kath, if I just hand over to you to explain a bit about yourself and your background and what you're now doing in this wonderful world of sleep deprivation.
Yeah. Yeah. So, thanks for having me. So I'm Kath Garwood. I have been a sleep consultant now for 2.5 years. I retrained all during the COVID period. Previous to that, I had been working in early years sector. I've got a degree in early childhood studies, and I was a Montessori childminder from when I had my first in 2015 right up until I stopped 2.5 years ago. So absolutely loved working with little ones and supporting them. But in 2017, after having my appendix removed, it came back as cancerous, and yes, I had a neuroendocrine tumor, and then had to undergo further surgery and everything. And then obviously I had to deal with at that time she was 18 months old, and had to go through the pregnancy and treatments and everything like that as well. So I found Mummy Star myself with support in 2017. Since then, we've come through it all. I'm all clear. My son was born happy, healthy, absolutely fine. We were very lucky to come through it all without too many complications, really. And yeah, but it sort of, I think that going through the sleep deprivation myself when being poorly sparked my interest in how can I possibly make sleep better, because it was breaking me. It was really breaking me, like just not being able to get my daughter to go to sleep. It was heartbreaking. And I was exhausted. So yeah, so that sort of planted the seed, really. It was actually going through it myself that planted the seed. So then in COVID, when everything changed for everybody, I knew I wanted to have a career change. So I started investigating more about sleep and sleep training. And that's when I retrained with the sleep nanny, who I've now sort of partnered with, and I work very closely with them to support families from pregnancy right up to about the age of 10.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. That's snapshot. There's so much more to this, I can imagine as well. But yeah, I mean, it's brilliant. I suppose COVID in so many ways, I think, has given us opportunities that we probably didn't necessarily sort of look into much but beforehand. So there's been some benefits of it. So yeah, really excited to hear more. So I'm going to ask the first question of you, if you don't mind,
Yep.
and then my colleagues will go through a couple more as well. So the first one is some babies and young children appear to sleep less than others, leaving new parents exhausted. And I don't think this is necessarily limited purely to when there's cancer diagnosed, but comparing baby or children to those of our friends and parents often leads us to feel guilty that they must be doing something wrong or to cause those differences in sleep pattern. Could you talk us through a little about different experiences that new families may have and how you might be able to help them?
Yeah, so with that, I would say you almost, as difficult as it can be for people that obviously you're supporting, you almost need to take the cancer diagnosis out of it, because every child's sleep is different anyway, if you're going through a cancer treatment or not. Every family's different, everything is different child to child. You can't sort of expect every single child to behave in exactly the same way. Now, on paper, for newborns, we have these things called wake windows where you expect them to be awake for sort of 45 minutes to 90 minutes ish, no more than that. Some little ones fall into that perfectly and will sort of naturally show sleepy cues at about sort of 45 minutes, an hour, and will be able to be placed down. And then happy days, they sort of get themselves into a nice little rhythm. Others don't. Others will really hide their sleep cues, be very easily distracted, be looking around at everything. They might not be feeding particularly sort of efficiently in those early weeks as well. So it's just about actually take a step back, stop Googling what my child should be doing. Dr. Google is the worst thing that you can do. I'm sure lots of families will appreciate that anyway. because it really is just about actually, especially in those first few weeks, obviously we can talk more about older ones as well, but in those first few weeks, it's very much about sort of having a break, tuning into your child, starting to read those cues, and then being like, actually, they get a bit fussy after about an hour. So that's when I'm going to start thinking I'm going to try and offer them a little feed and then get them down for a nap. If that's a contact nap, fine. If it's a sleep in their own space, great. But it's just about stop pressuring yourself to get everything perfect, because nobody does it perfect. Absolutely nobody does it perfect. I don't do it perfect. It's my job. My kids still have odd nights where, like, my son will decide to come downstairs 2 or 3 times and say that he needs a wee or needs another drink. And my kids are perfectly well, they sleep well, they sleep the right amount, but nobody ever gets it perfect. Now, there are certain aspects, like going through the first few months, that up until about the age of 4 months, sleep's meant to be unpredictable. It's meant to be a little bit all over the place, because little ones aren't ready to be sleeping perfectly, like regimented for naps and nighttime sleep. You should be able to expect somewhere between 8 and 10 hours of nighttime sleep quite early on. Obviously, there's going to be some feeds involved in there. But then by the time they get to about 4 months, that's when things will start being able to be a little bit more predictable. There'll be some things that you can sort of start expecting your little one to have 3, maybe 4 fairly predictable naps. That being said, it does not mean that they have to be doing what your next door neighbour's 4-month-old's doing. Every single family is going to look a little bit different. There might be a school run in there that someone else hasn't got. There might be a hospital appointment that you need to be able to, fit around life. And there might be trips to grandparents or whatever. There's so many variables in every family that you cannot compare to anybody else. It's more about looking at their sleep overall in a 24-hour period. So some little ones, I'll stick with the sake of this. So you can expect 8 to 10 hours of daytime sleep and 4 to 5 hours of, 8 to 10 hours of nighttime sleep and 4 to 5 hours of daytime sleep. But your little one actually might not fit into that. They might do 11 to 12 hours of nighttime sleep with feeds and 3 hours of daytime sleep. That's absolutely fine. The point is that in 24 hours, they're still getting the right amount, but just in their own little way.
Thank you. I mean, this is just fascinating. It takes me back. I'm sure it does for a lot of us. But I think I just wanted to pick up on a point you talked about, contact nap. I think a lot of the feedback and the conversations we've had with families over the years, I think we will come on to the use of the word guilt and where that creeps in. But I think one of the common things that people have, this pressure that you have to lay your baby down, you have to have them in a routine of being in the bed or being in the Moses basket. And often when you are so fatigued physically, that it's almost needing to be encouraged to say, if lying back on the couch and your baby falls asleep on you in the midst of that cuddle, that is absolutely fine. And that is not poor quality sleep for baby. And that is not, that's not you failing in what you have perceived, or what everything that you see and read around you perceives to be as what is normal versus not normal. And I think it's
There
often,
is no normal. I think
yeah,
that's the thing. There is no normal. And yes, especially for those first, I would say 6 months, having the odd contact nap is lovely. But also, if you're absolutely exhausted and just don't want to have to go through, putting your baby down, if they're not happy going down in their independent sleep space, let them have a contact nap. Take them out in the buggy if you've got the energy to, or if you've got somebody else who could do it. Take them for a walk, get them out instead. They don't have to have all of their sleep in a cot. And I say this to parents who I'm supporting who aren't facing health struggles as well, on top of just parenting struggles, that you don't have to put so much pressure on yourself. If you can manage one cot nap a day, you're winning. Great, perfect. The others can be contact, they can be motion, they can be however they need to be. It's more important that they're getting the sleep rather than how they're getting it.
Yeah, I think that's an especially important message. I think that for families where they talk about missing or losing that bond, or that bond being interrupted, where they're so often, like you said, in and out of hospital appointments and this, that, and the other, where they're missing those times, they're having that having that sort of skin to skin contact nap is really, really important if it gives a little bit of that back. Not obviously it's difficult to replace the whole experience when it's so interrupted, but
Yeah.
if it's giving little bits of it back and these small wins, it's taking them when they come rather than pressurizing yourself. But
There's things like children do respond well to consistency, even early on, but that consistency doesn't always have to look the same. And that might sound completely contradicting, but the lead up to going to sleep can look the same, whoever's doing it. It can involve some milk, it can involve a cuddle, and then it could involve them being placed down in a sleep space and having a bit of support around you. But if those initial steps before going to sleep are the same, milk, cuddle, maybe a song, something like that, and then they end up falling asleep on you, having that time to have that positive connection, there's nothing wrong with that. The build up to sleep needs to be somewhat consistent so that they can read those cues and know that sleep is coming. But then actually where they go to sleep or how they go to sleep doesn't have to be exactly the same every time.
thank you. I'm going to hand over to Lauren now and give you a rest from me asking questions.
Wonderful, thanks, Pete. Great, and I think you might have touched a little bit on this question already, but just to see if there's anything else you might say on this point. So mummy star mums are often anxious about the effects that cancer treatment might have on their babies. After giving birth, they might be hypervigilant or looking for any ways in which their newborn behaves differently. If their newborn sleeps less than their siblings did at that age, mums might be concerned it's related to their treatment. How would you reassure parents in this situation and help them manage their worries?
Yeah. So obviously, and again, I can sympathise with this because I was there, and my first daughter had been well, I thought she was a good sleeper. She wasn't. I realised on reflection she was terrible. But when I had my second, he was really sleepy. I was having to wake him up for feeds, and I was really worried it was a side effect after the medication and everything that I had had. But actually now, knowing what I know now, it's not. It so much of how little ones go to sleep is down to their personality. They are born in a certain way, and there is nothing that we can do to change that. And if you've got a little firecracker who's going to grow up and change the world and knows exactly how they want things and is quite sensitive to change, they're going to show that in their sleep. They might struggle to settle. They might be really easily get upset if you try and change any part of their routine. That's nothing that a mum has done, treatment or not. That's who they are. On the flip side of that, you might have a completely chilled out baby who's really easygoing and, like my son was, just really likes his sleep. Great. It's almost like running a jackpot. But that can still come with worries because you can then sort of worry that, you're not meeting their feeding needs and things like that through the night. So it's about actually, again, just avoid Google is a big message. So just don't Google how much should my baby be sleeping, what time should they be having their feeds through the night, because it's going to be different for everybody. But also there's other things to consider, like, has the baby got any medical concerns? Are they tongue-tied? Have they got reflux? Have they got colic? There could be just the general things that we're going to worry about with newborn sleep. That can massively impact everything about them. But also, like, feeding, is feeding well established? If you're managing to breastfeed, then is that actually going well? Are they getting what they need? And if you are bottle feeding, is there any dairy allergies or anything like that that could be causing issues? So I get that mums in this situation will probably automatically think something that is happening to me could be the cause for their sleep issues. It's probably not. It's probably their own thing. And, every mum goes through this. Obviously, it's heightened if you're struggling yourself. But we do all go through this. But like I said, the first few weeks, especially, is just about tuning in to those personality traits. My biggest sort of tip for those first sort of few months is listening to the cry. So when your baby cries, just give it a few seconds. Don't sort of rush in and immediately pick them up. It's just about sort of like having a breather and listening to the tones of the cries, because they will all have different cries for different things. And you'll very quickly be able to figure out, are they bored? Are they hungry? Are they tired? do they need a cuddle? And then you can start to respond appropriately. Obviously, if they need a cuddle, you pick them up and give them a cuddle. If they need a feed, you pick them up and give them a feed. They may well just be bored. So just moving their location or giving them something else to look at might just be enough. And if you can start doing that, then it really helps with nighttime sleep, especially because you can start sort of waking up and hearing what they're telling us, responding appropriately, so that we don't start getting stuck in sort of more difficult situations where you rush in, try to feed, doesn't work, and then you're up for hours just like, what's going on? Why can't I fix this? So yeah, little ones are very good at telling us what's wrong a lot of the time, but you just have to give yourself that grace period to be like, okay, what are they trying to tell me and how can I help that? And that doesn't have to be mum either. That's the good thing. It can be, everyone can learn, everyone around you, your support network can do that. That whole saying of, it takes a village to raise a child. We generally don't have a village anymore. We have a very small household. So getting people in your close support network to do these things as well is going to help massively, not only because mums might be needing to actually sleep, might not be there, might be in hospital, might be, not able to respond. But it's just helpful anyway. It's so much pressure and mentally draining for all new parents to try and figure out their newborn's sleep and how to best support it. So, use the help, ask for help is my big tip as well, especially in those early weeks. Like if someone wants to come and meet baby, they come, but only if they hoover your house first. Then they can say hello to baby. They can come, but only if they bring you some dinners to chuck in the freezer. Ask. People want to help. They ask for the help, and then you can just focus on resting and spending that time with your baby. You don't need to do anything else.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kath.
All right.
Sarah? Oh, sorry, Sarah, you're on mute.
Every time. I do that every time. So the last question we have, so some of our mums have commented on the forum about when they are pregnant and going through cancer treatment, older children within their family who had previously been good sleepers can completely lose the ability to follow their previous bedtime routine and sleep through the night. So as these mums are already very tired from their treatment, sleepless nights with children can become a real family problem. Can you talk about why this might be happening and what could be done?
This is a big question. There's a lot to say about this one because it depends on the age of the child a bit as well. But again, from my own experience, my 18-month-old went from being what I thought was a good sleeper, who was pretty settled, to waking up every hour, 2 hours, and just screaming. There was nothing I could do to support her. I was recovering from surgery, so rushing out of bed wasn't really an option. And there were so many nights where she just ended up in bed with me because it was the only thing I could do. That's fine. She's grown up to be a fully functioning, crazy, active girl. She's not broken. She's absolutely fine. It's how we got through it. There is nothing wrong with that. A lot of the time, if you've got and you're not around as much or not as active as you once were, they will pick up on it. Even at a very young age, they are going to pick up on it. And that's no fault of the mum, obviously, but it's about almost acknowledging that. They're allowed to be a little bit more needy and be looking for more reassurance. That's okay. You need to find a way that's manageable for the mum, older partners, whoever it is who's supporting the little ones, whoever is in the family home, to actually be like, okay, this is what we can manage through the night. Because like I said earlier, that consistency for children is really important. So I would suggest sitting down with your partner and being like, right, okay, they're waking up a lot at night, they're needing more reassurance. What we're going to do is, instead of, say they previously got to a stage where you could say goodnight and leave the room and not hear from them until the next day, it may well go downhill, and it may mean that actually one of the parents needs to just sit in the room with them while they go off to sleep. But you need to be prepared that every single time they wake up through the night, you're going to have to repeat that action so that every time they go to sleep, it's the same response. That will help them to feel safe and secure in their own sleep space. So that's where whoever it is that's at home with the kids needs to sit down and agree, what are we prepared to do? If we are happy to, can the partner take the brunt of the night wakings so that mum can rest? Or can, mum depend, it will depend so much, family's family and what's going on. But, maybe mum can sort of say, like, I've got enough energy in me to respond until, say, 10 o'clock at night, but then I need to get to bed after that and sleep. So you might almost need to sort of take the night in shifts like that, depending on how mum's doing. And, with families I've worked with in the past where not necessarily dealing with cancer, but other health issues, there's always a way. There's a schedule that you can find that will work, but it's about finding something that might not necessarily look like it did before. They might not be perfectly independent. They might need a little bit more reassurance, but it won't last forever. And almost like acknowledging the fact that the little ones might be struggling with the change is what they need. It's like they need that validation a little bit as well, to be like, I know mum's not very well. What's going on? I think I need a bit more of a hug as well. It's fine. If mum can do it, great. If not, then someone consistent in the house is what they need. So it's just about doing that. If they're a little bit older and you can talk things out, so say you've got sort of like a 3+, so I say sort of 3+, where they've got more of the cognitive ability to have that understanding of what's going on. There's lots of other things you can do. A little bit older, you can do journaling with them, but there's loads of really good. There's a really good book called Happy Confident Me, and it's really good for sort of 5-6-year-olds to sort of sit down every day. They can do this with anybody, and they just reflect on their day. They just have to, it's got loads of prompts on there about, what's been really good, what's not been really good, has there anything been worrying you? And it just gives them that open platform to be like, things are a bit rubbish. That's okay. We're all here together. Let's talk about this. And then what that does is, instead of them keeping it all bottled up and going to bed feeling a bit anxious, they actually end up going to bed feeling a bit more relaxed and a bit more at peace with what's going on. And then you find that the bedtime battles stop. So yeah, there's other things as well that you can bring in. So there's visual checklists. I love for slightly older children, because again, it's almost like trying to get them to calm their brains down before they go off to sleep. So if they're not at sort of 3+ age and they're still sort of not totally understanding what's going on, but know something's up, then you can bring in a visual checklist, which is literally just their bedtime routine in photo form, and then get them to tick it off as they're doing it. But what that does is, I like to vision it like a corridor, like a long corridor, and they need to close all the doors going down the corridor. And then they get into bed and they're like, yeah, okay, I'm ready for bed now. But it just helps. So you can put things on there like, let's say goodnight to everybody. Done. Wave a picture of somebody like with waving, something like that. Have brushed teeth. Have had my bedtime story. I've had a wee. I've had a bedtime cuddle. Now I'm ready for sleep. And you can get them to tick it off. I've done this with little ones from about 20 months. It's amazing how much it just calms little ones down, so that they're actually like, yep, okay, we're good. We can get to sleep now. But it's about being realistic, I think, with this. It's not a bad thing if sleep goes downhill, and it might have nothing to do with the fact that things have changed. It could just be a developmental thing. It could be that their child's overtired, because a lot of the time children will become overtired and then they'll have night wakings, and that can go on for years. So it might be nothing. It might be that actually they fully understand what's going on. They're okay, but they're overtired. It could just be that they need to go to bed an hour earlier, and that will stop the night wakings. But first of all, I would try to make sure that, you are giving them that time to express any worries that they have got in an age-appropriate way. Finding positive connection time with them as well. If mum is at home, then laying on the sofa and watching a Disney film and having a nap there during the day, or if they're past nap age, just having a cuddle and doing some colouring together, or some Play-Doh or something that mum could do while resting. It's just making sure they're getting that positive connection time, and that's going to fill their cup up. So that by the time they get to bed, they're not feeling like they're missing out on anything. But there's so much more I could say about older children's sleep. I could talk for 10 hours on this. But I'd also say when you are like preparing, you know, your plan for like, okay, how are we happy to respond? What are we happy to sort of do through the night if it is a tough night? Be realistic, but also have a backup plan. So if little one's really struggling and you're like, you know, sitting in the room with them, trying to get them to go to sleep, and they're awake for a really long time and they're really upset, bring them into bed with you. If that's going to work, bring them into bed with you. As long as mum can still rest as well, and then you actually get the sleep, do that. It's not going to break them. If co-sleeping is not an option, then can you set up a little sofa bed or something in their bedroom and sleep in their room with them instead? That would probably fall on the partner. But you know, could dad do that? Could they just go into the room and actually just sleep in the kids' room instead? Obviously, that's not ideal, but it's about having a sort of backup plan in your head so that if the night is going terribly, you know what you're going to do, and you're not going to start trying to throw the kitchen sink at them, because that's when little ones start getting more uneasy. If they're like, oh, I might get a feed, I might get a nappy change, I might get a snack, anything like that, they're not going to play on it, but they will naturally start trying to push those limits a little bit every night. Whereas if the limits are clear that, you know, we're going to sit with you, we're going to offer you a cuddle, we're going to stay with you until you've gone back off to sleep. If that's not happening and you're really upset, then one of us is going to sleep in your room. That's it. That's the only variation that they get. And that will help to settle things down.
There's so much more I think I'd like to tap into. Can I just ask you to, I think you were kind of pausing about talking about older children's sleep, but I think given the ranges that we see people from, you know, with a newborn as well as having those older kids, and it's just a timely point really just to make reference to quite a new resource called parentingwithcancer.org, which is something that we were involved in the development of. And just on the subject that you were talking about there's a section within that called 3 a.m. worries, which is where it's particularly, you know, around sort of when children suddenly start to become wakeful in the night. It might be involving bedwetting for, you know, children of variety of ages as well. But it links really, you know, smooth, I think, into what you're talking about right now with this question is the multiple reasons as to why. Is it sleep regression of some sort, or is it because there's just this burden of worries, or maybe a lack of explanation or conversation that's going on in the house, and it's causing that kind of spiral of worry to go on, and it gets transferred into sleep. And how, I guess because it becomes quite easy to conflate one issue with the other in a situation like this. But actually, if you're able to find the headspace to be able to separate the two of them and tackle them separately, it sometimes can be that one actually has nothing to do with the other. And there obviously will be plenty of times when the two things are interconnected as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, children as they get older, and not just because mum might be poorly or struggling with any illness, children struggle with anxiety around school and around, you know, friendship groups, and or they might not be anxious at all, but they might just be absolutely exhausted. If you've got a little one who's in lots of after school clubs or in lots of wraparound care, they need that time to be able to wind down. And more often I'm seeing children who are 7, 8, 9 whose sleep's gone massively downhill. They're awake for hours during the night, and it's just because they're doing too much. And I think that we're all a bit guilty of that sometimes. Obviously, there's times when we can't avoid it, but it's about actually just looking at how much sleep should they be getting for their age. School age children, lots of people assume that they can be up until 8:30, and that's fine. Actually, they have higher sleep needs for quite a lot of years. So I would say up until the age of 8, they should be sleeping at least 10 hours at night still. If they're not getting that and you're starting to get night wakings, it's probably the overtiredness that's causing that. Because what happens during the night is if they are in a sleep deficit, and this is across the board for all ages, if they're in a sleep deficit, they've got higher levels of cortisol. And all that does during the night is we all have micro wakings. Everybody wakes up at night, and normally we don't know, and we just go back to sleep and we don't even think about it. But if our cortisol levels are raised, then we are chemically waking up, but waking up fully. It's that fight or flight instinct. So instead of just kind of like waking up and then being like, oh, I'm going to roll back over and go back off to sleep, if we're overtired, we wake up and go, what's that? What's that? What's that? And that's where that sort of 3 a.m. worry thing is likely to come in. So they're waking up and then they're going, I'm really worried about mum. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that. I'm worried about everything. Normally, night wakings are caused by overtiredness. Not in every situation, but I would say 9 times out of 10, it's overtiredness. So if you've got a little one who's waking at night, then rather than doing some support around positive mindset stuff with them during the day, which there's loads that you can do with little ones there to help support them going off to sleep, you also need to make sure that they're actually getting to sleep at an appropriate time to make sure that that's not the reason why they're having the night waking in the first place. There's loads of things that you can do, loads of mindfulness playlists on Spotify, on Amazon, everything like that for older children. I love doing those. I think that's really good. I think the journaling can be great for older children, like I said earlier. But do it at an appropriate time. I wouldn't do that just before bedtime because it can almost encourage them to start being like, I'm really worried about this, I'm really worried about that, which is good, but it's about trying to find a time that's not connected to bedtime, so they're not taking that worry to bed. So when they get in from school, give them 20 minutes, sit on the sofa with them, have a drink, do it then. If they're not into it, not all kids will want to. They'll just be like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to sit around and talk about my feelings. I want to go and play. I want to go and do whatever I want to do. Then try and encourage them before, like after dinner, to listen to a mindfulness story. There's so many like age appropriate ones that you can do. And it just helps them to start internalizing a little bit and start looking after their own mental health. It's so important. It's so important for them.
I mean, this is where the interconnection with cancer support for children and then direct impact on sleep is so important. It's interesting listening to you talk about overtiredness though, and it can't help but me laugh. It's like we're unable to apply this to ourselves as adults so often when we all so many of us get awful night's sleep and we're there sitting there wondering why we're not getting this and why we're grumpy this and the other. And it's at its base, it's no different to what you just explained. We apply it to children, and in that framework, we don't apply it to adulthood. And yeah, if we just did a few of those little things that you've just said that you do for a child very, very quickly without even a moment's thought, we'd probably all benefit from it, in different ways.
It's things like screen time. So I'm not anti-screen time at all. And again, as going through it with my own, I've already said, have a nap while watching a Disney film. Great. I think that's brilliant. But before bedtime, I do always try to say to people, try to avoid screens for about 45 minutes before you expect a little one to go to sleep. That's the same for adults as well. And that's because of the blue light behind the screens. It keeps your brain going, and it takes about 45 minutes to an hour for your brain to actually switch off after having that. So if grown-ups are sat there scrolling, or your little one wakes up in the middle of the night and you start scrolling on your phone and it takes you ages to go back to sleep, that's why. So it's like, just try to avoid screens whenever you can, but be realistic. There are, especially with mums who are poorly and are just needing to focus on rest, there is nothing wrong with laying on the sofa watching Bluey or whatever it is that is the new hot thing, but try to keep that during the day because it's chill time. That's fine. But when you're thinking about bedtime, try and do it for yourself as well. Just be like, actually, I'm going to have a cut-off time, after 9:30, no screens, and then I can make sure that I actually get to bed and get to sleep.
I was listening to one of the Diary of a CEO podcast last week, and he made exactly that point. He said he goes to bed, and if he looks at his phone beforehand, he goes to bed with his to-do list in his head, so he doesn't sleep properly. But we all do that in different ways. It's like the doom scrolling habit that we have on Facebook and social media. We're not seeking anything, but it's the interaction that spurs then your responses. Sort of two things that you see that you didn't even seek out in the first place. But just one part, just really, because you mentioned it a couple of times, that whole idea of that time on the sofa watching a movie with a child, and if you end up dozing or the child dozes off, I think again that's a conversation that we have heard a number of times over the years. I remember having a conversation myself with my late wife, and I've spoken to so many families and so have the team where that has come up in the past. And I think again it's reiterating to families that even if you don't feel like you are at your most present as a parent in that moment in time, it is still very close bonding time. You're still there together in that moment, even if you don't feel as present and as active. If you doze off while watching a sofa, but you snuggled up, there's real value in that. And I think that's what a lot of people, you hear that kind of parenting guilt creep in the language of, I'm not doing what I should do. I'm not doing the basic things. It's like, well, the option is, and I think even when it translates to using, a kid in front of the TV watching something while you're wanting to do something around the house. It's almost like it enters the framing of the TV is babysitting the child, as opposed to giving ourselves a break and saying, do you know what, if that 5 minutes or 20 minutes gives you that nap time, that breathing space, that time to just go and make yourself a brew and just stand there and enjoy it, because you've been racked with fatigue all week, and this is the first time that you're starting to come out of that chemo regimen or treatment regimen. It's so important to give yourself that break and take the pressure off yourself.
It's prioritizing your own mental health as much as you can if you're struggling with any sort of cancer treatment, or even post, even if you're still in recovery. It's a lot on your mental load, and if actually you just feel tapped out and you're like, I love you, little person, with all my heart, but I need a break. Like I said earlier, we haven't got that village anymore. So if the TV needs to come in or a screen needs to come in so that you can just go and, like you say, go and have a cup of tea, do it. Because if that helps you to reset and gets you into a more positive place, you're then more likely to then, an hour later be like, right, okay, let's do something fun. Let's do something. It doesn't have to be crazy active, but it can be let's play a board game, or, even like on a tablet, sitting and playing a game with them on their tablet. You're playing with them, you're engaging with them. Nothing wrong with that, as long as it doesn't happen all day, every day, and not right before they go to sleep at bedtime. Yeah. Use it. It's massively. And I remember, so my daughter, when I was unwell, and then recovering from surgery and everything, she desperately needed her naps still, but refused them. She just point blank refused them. She thought it was a trick. She was like, every time I would try to get her to go in her bedroom during the day, she would just kick and scream, and it was horrific. So every afternoon after lunch, I would put a Disney film on and just lay on the sofa with her. Sometimes she'd go to sleep, but sometimes she wouldn't. But it gave us both that reset that we needed. And then if she didn't go to sleep, I would just get her to bed early that night instead. It's about being realistic. Like, yes, if you haven't got all these extra complications and you can dedicate 100% of your time to getting your child onto a regimented schedule, you might be able to. But in all honesty, most people don't. And if people say that their kids are sleeping perfectly for every single nap and going to sleep perfectly at every bedtime and sleeping through their night, they're probably lying.
Yeah, I remember a conversation many, many years ago saying that to my wife at the time, that pressure and that tearful walk through the door of everybody else's child is just sleeping. Why is, our daughter not doing this and the other? And I remember saying to her at the time, I could bet a bottom dollar many of the people who've just said that their children are just perfect sleepers probably actually aren't. But there again, it's that part of that societal pressure that we must have our child doing this and must have our children doing that. And the amount of upset, and again, like you said, it's God, if you could burn Google and all the pressure it creates, I think many of us would have done years ago in terms of what we're supposed to be able to do as parents. And every child, whether you've got 3 or 6 or 1, it's I could talk about this for hours.
Yeah. And I think that it is that pressure, but it's also what was I going to say with that? Oh, it's gone out of my mind. No, it's gone. So,
sorry.
A really valid point. No, it's fine.
blame me for chat through. I'm going to pause the recording there, so that if there's any other questions that any of our families want to either come off mic or come off screen or both, I want to ask you as well. So just before we bring the recording to an end, Kath, just a massive thank you from all of us, really. This is fascinating. I'm saying that is because it's not finished yet. But yeah, it's a conversation that could probably go on a lot longer than we've got. But just thank you for sharing all of your insight. I think it does add, even more to it. I think the fact that you've come into this from a place that many of our families are as well, in terms of that juggle of wanting to just, be able to just parent, whatever way, that looks for any of us, and trying to juggle that with, whether it is surgeries or treatment. But I think overriding the worry and the concerns and the lack of headspace that I think we have when we're going through those these times as a family. So yeah, just a huge thank you on behalf of all of us, and families that will watch this afterwards as well. So
I'll just say that as a final thing, just don't compare to anyone else. But also, the only priority it doesn't matter what your sleep looks like. If you are happy with how much sleep your child and you are getting, then it's working. Your child does not have to be sleeping independently. If you are happy to co-sleep, co-sleep. As long as mum is getting the rest that she needs and the child is getting enough in a 24-hour period, then you're fine. It doesn't have to look a certain way.
Thank you.